Haven of Rest Missionary Baptist Church Sunday School Lesson number 8 for Sunday, April 24th, 2016. The lesson is entitled Reconciling Faith. The lesson comes from Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 24. We were asked to read Luke chapter 15, 11 through 32. The place is probably Perea. The time is 30 AD. The aim of today's lesson: facts to understand the spiritual element in reconciling with others. Principle: to have the spiritual courage to reconcile with someone who may not deserve it. Application: to reconcile with a person with whom there may be a broken relationship. The golden text reads, "This my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Luke 15:24. Introduction. On this particular day, Jesus was speaking to a mixed audience. Two distinct groups are mentioned. Tax collectors and others are considered to be sinners by the religious elite, were there for the specific purpose of hearing Jesus speak. Since tax collectors worked for the Roman government, they were viewed as traitors and outcasts. The problem for the religious leaders was that Jesus sat and ate with these less than desirable people. Such action indicated identification and welcome, something that avoided at all costs. In their minds, Jesus was also guilty because of his association with such bad people of low reputation. Because of their condescending attitudes, Jesus decided to instruct them in his special style of teaching, namely parables. On this particular occasion, he used a series of 3 parables with a lost object being found in each one. What we learn is that such reconciling causes joy in heaven. We have 2 outlines. 1, a broken relationship, coming from Luke 15:11 through 16, and a restored relationship, coming from Luke 15:17 through 24. A broken relationship. Luke 15, verse 11. "And he said, a certain man had 2 sons." Verse 12. "And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living." 13. "And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living." 14. "And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want." 15. "And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into the fields to feed swine." 16. "And he would fain have filled his belly with the husk that the swine did eat, and no man gave unto him." The son's request, Luke 15:11 through 12. This is the third of 3 parables. It is about a man and his 2 sons. For some unknown reason, the younger son asked for his portion of the inheritance early. Normally, such division of an inheritance did not occur until after the death of the father. At that time, the older brother would receive a double portion. In this case, the older would get 2/3 and the younger 1/3. Jesus did not explain the details of the division because that was not important to the illustration and the point he was making. The only thing we can know for certain is that after this, the son would have no more claim to further inheritance. The request seems to be one of arrogant disregard for the authority of his father. The father's response was at the very least gracious, but it was also a generous act on his part. He did not force his son to stay with him, but instead granted his request by giving him his portion of the inheritance early. In order to understand the parable, we need to recognize that the father represents God, the older brother represents the religious leader, and the younger brother represents sinners. The son's wastefulness, Luke 15:13 through 14. As planned, the younger son took his new fortune and left home, traveling to another country, a good distance from home. He must have become something of a party animal, making himself popular with everybody because of his willingness to spend on them. The son's desperation, Luke 15:15 through 16. We have to give this boy credit for getting out there and getting a job for himself. This is a good example for some today who are too lazy to do this when they can rely on parents or government to meet their needs. He hired himself out to a Gentile pig farmer, thereby working for a foreigner and caring for animals that were unclean to the Jews. To add to his destitution, he became so hungry that he wanted to eat their food. To feed pigs was great humiliation for a Jewish young man, and to eat their food was complete degradation. Remembering the analogy to this parable, we recognize that sometimes God allows people to reach rock bottom in order to get them to look to Him. This is what this man was at the time. A life that was supposed to be wonderful had turned out to be one huge disappointment. A restored relationship. Verse 17, and when he came to himself, he said, how many hired servants of my father's have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? 18, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. 19, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. Make me as one of thy hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. And when he was yet a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in thy sight, and am no more worthy to be called thy son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. 23, and bring hither the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. 24, for this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. The son's decision, Luke 15:17 through 19. It was while sitting among the pigs that were better fed than he was that he finally came to his senses and thought about home. He realized that what he ran from was far better than anything he had found since. The young man's greatest realization was that his father's servants had it a whole lot better than he did right then. He no longer had any money. He no longer had any dignity. He no longer had any friends, and he no longer had any family relationship he could enjoy. If his father would allow it, he would return to his home, confess his sins, and ask to be allowed to live there as a servant. That way he could at least have food regularly. The son's return, Luke 15:20 through 21. Finally, his mind went to work again. Humans have the capacity to change. We do not have to remain in the pig pen. We do not have to continue to live as sinners. We can become responsible for our lives. We can quit our riotous living. We can come home. The son was still a long way off when his father spotted him. His longing for his son's return is fully evident in his actions. We cannot help noticing that the focus of the attention has now changed from the son to the father. Jesus made this shift on purpose in order to portray his father as the loving God, wanting for the return of those he loved so dearly. The son made his rehearsed speech, but we soon see that it was ignored. The father heard it but chose to act according to his own wishes. There are two perspectives about the parables in Luke 15. Some think they teach the restoration of a sinner's believer to relationship with God. Others believe they teach the salvation of one who is lost. We should note the key words here. The father said his son had been dead and was now alive, lost and now found. Jesus was speaking to those who were rejecting his message and objecting to his association with sinners. Restoration would not answer this. The primary emphasis, therefore, seems to be salvation. The Father's welcome, Luke 15:19 through 24. Contrary to the son's intent to be a hired servant, the Father made him a full member of the family again. He gave him a position that like that which he had previously, one that was full of privileges. He had the best robe brought out and put on him, along with the ring and sandals for his feet. Since hired servants probably went barefoot, this was a clear indication that the father was receiving him back as his son and not a hired servant. The fatted calf was reserved for a banquet of celebration, usually during one of the national feasts. The boy's return was cause enough for the father to celebrate. The Father portrays our Heavenly Father in His love, kindness, grace, and mercy. If one of us needs to be reconciled to Him, we can be certain that He is willing and watching and will never turn away someone coming to Him. For this young man, the return was just the beginning. From then on, his relationship with his father would have been filled with blessings and joy. So it is for every person who comes to our Father. Questions. How did the father respond to his son's arrogant request? 2. What persons or groups are portrayed by the parable? 3. What did the son do after receiving what he asked for? 4. What was especially degrading about the son's circumstances and employment? 5. What brought him to his senses and what did he decide to do? 6. How do we know the father never stopped longing for his son? 7. In what way did Jesus shift the attention of his parable from the son to the father? 8. Why is it important that we focus on the father? 9. What did the father do to restore and rejoice over his son? 10. What does this reconciliation show us about God our Father? This ends the Sunday school lesson for Haven Arrest Missionary Baptist Church, Sunday, April 24th, 2016. Thank you for listening. God bless you.